audio and the video. So I'll
Good.
see if we're coming through now. How are you anyway?
I'm good. I'm
Yeah,
good. I'm
great,
I'm
keeping.
sat in Manchester.
All
It's
right.
a nice evening.
Yeah,
I
it's a sunny
can't
evening,
complain.
isn't it?
Yes,
The days are getting longer and longer for me.
work days.
No, really, I prefer the sun to go down at some point.
Yeah,
So right. Let's see if I go on mute and see if the audio is coming through. Yeah, perfect. Okay. So without further ado, Sam, thank you for doing this and for agreeing to be the first guest with me um, in this show of some kind. The aim is always to chat with somebody and learn from them. So
yeah,
I know I've got the right person, and I'm really, really happy that you have agreed to do this and help us out with understanding more about digital transformation and understanding about where the opportunities are. Specifically, the audience that is usually engaging with my videos and my content are naturally electrical engineers,
yes,
but
yeah.
mostly people who are entry level. Excuse me. As a disclaimer, I've told Sam already, but I've got to tell everybody else I've got a sore throat. Has been lingering for a few days now, so hopefully I'll let Sam do most of the talking today, and I can just sit back and learn. So
No
this is the
problem.
aim, and um, you know um, the audience is, as I said, electrical engineers, but we do get also different audiences. So by all means, if you feel there's something that is helpful for the wider audience outside of the engineering community, by all means, feel free to share it as well. And over to you if you'd like to introduce yourself and
Perfect.
give us a bit about your professional background and your current role and anything exciting you're working on.
So yeah, thanks for the intro, Mo. And really good to be here. This is the kind of first time for me for a kind of a live stream podcast as well. So it's always good
You'll like it, I'm
to try new things. And I think that's a really important theme for this topic, the digital transformation, is that I don't think any of us necessarily kind of set out with thinking about a career as in kind of digital engineering or
sure.
digital transformation. I think a lot of us are all actually, we have a kind of another specialism and actually see a need to continually transform and continually
True.
improve the way we deliver work. So I guess in terms of my background, I am actually it's a kind of civil structural engineer by training, but my undergraduate degree was in general engineering, and so when I talk to electrical engineers, I do know a little bit,
Don't try. Don't try.
a little bit about what you have to
Leave
go
that to the
through.
last 10
Um,
minutes in the call.
yes,
Yeah.
so I'm not a complete bore from that perspective. Um, but I've worked in the energy sector for over 25 years now, and even before university, was working in combined heat and power, and then joined Atkins as it was back in 2004 as a graduate engineer, and then spent 10 years kind of working across the UK nuclear industry, um, working on quite a lot of complex either decommissioning, new build, or kind of operational sites. To help keep the lights on, or help kind of responsibly deal with our legacies, or build new facilities. So increasingly worked across kind of multidisciplinary teams, providing technical leadership and management, and also kind of hands-on engineering as well. But I then kind of took a sidestep into a kind of a business strategy and growth role. And increasingly, I found myself in conversations in the digital space, whether that's adopting
Interesting.
new solutions. Blockchain was quite a big thing back 10 years ago. People were thinking, all right, how can I use blockchain? Um, and um, uh, and also to talking with kind of vendors around actually how we leverage data, machine learning, and that then led me into kind of a role where I found myself kind of leading the digital transformation initially across our kind of Europe region in our nuclear business, to then kind of taking on a kind of a more global role. So now I work with over 4,500 people, engineers across the world, across AtkinsRéalis's global nuclear sector, and really kind of getting to grips with a lot of some of the challenges that our teams face, but also those by our clients, and the kind of how kind of new technologies are kind of disrupting industries, and also then how we can bring kind of new technologies from other sectors into the energy sector, which is I find really exciting, because it's a case that someone else has spent the money, and we can then get the outcomes at lower cost.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
that's very interesting, and it's one of the things that's also beneficial for people to know, that how careers can progress. And in your case, where, well, first of all, as a civils engineer, you definitely know more about electrical engineering than I know about civils engineering. Let's put it this way. Yeah. But at the same time, it's really interesting how you start with a degree, or with you know your specialty in civils, whether it be electrical, mechanical, and then your career takes you into interesting places, certainly parts that
yeah,
you feel are more intriguing for you and engaging for you, and
yeah,
you end
yeah,
up finding yourself in a niche within a niche, if that makes sense.
yeah,
So that's a good message for everybody, especially the entry level engineers as well. And
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I was going to say on that, and that's a great point, Mo. And as an engineer, we've got quite a lot of transferable skills. So kind of firstly, kind of problem solving. Secondly, kind of an ability to understand technical concepts, and assimilate kind of technical knowledge and information, but
true,
also to work with people, um, and also an element where we're willing to kind of manage and plan and manage projects. And actually, when you kind of think about some of those competencies and skills, actually I apply a lot of those in my
true,
day-to-day work, and just actually trying to deliver change and transformation.
true. Yeah, very good. And how are you finding the job today compared to, let's say, when you first got into digital transformation? Is there a big difference in the technology today with AI, with the new applications of LLMs and agentic AIs, etc.?
Absolutely. I think it feels like everything's speeding up, and
Yeah.
everything that um, probably 7 or 8 years ago, we would say, "Oh yeah, but we can do this."
Mm,
Imagine if you can do that. That is actually becoming a reality now.
mm,
Um,
mm,
and so I think there's still way to go. There's still road to run. But I
mm,
think actually, what was, kind of this in the realms of
mm.
academia
Yeah,
10 years ago, is actually now, firmly in people's hands, and
yeah,
it's more. I think it's more limited by our imagination and our ability to integrate and configure the tools into the way we work, and
yeah,
the maturity of the tools itself.
yeah. I think there is a lot of hype around the technology, but I do believe that the application level is really something that is taking off more and more
Yeah,
now, especially with agentic AIs, or AI agents as they call it. I mean, it's really amazing how these agents are now able to be not necessarily coded, or even that we're coding now in English language. So we're talking plain
mm-hmm.
English to the LLM, and it's setting, the process for those agent AI modules to do stuff, whether it's information gathering, or whether it's organizing in a certain way, or carrying out, I think, tasks that are perhaps in today they are, as a beginning, they're not really taking over a lot, but I think eventually they will be involved and into every office and computer-based job.
Yeah.
Where do you see this in the construction industry?
So I think what we will see is that more and more of the off-the-shelf packages and applications that we use on a daily basis will have some kind of AI element in them. And the obvious first one is would kind of the Microsoft suite. So if you obviously
True.
have Microsoft 365 Copilot available to you, you've got that integrated into your Outlook, into your Word, into PowerPoint as a support function. But what I think you'll find is more and more the software vendors are starting to bake in strategies around, okay, well, how do we integrate this into the way that the user experience for accessing kind of previous designs or accessing kind of certain features and functionality within the software. So I think that's one to watch out for over the last 5 years, over the next 5 years. Was actually increasingly some of this capability being more at your fingertips and just integrated into the way that the solution works.
Yeah.
And I think with that, it's not about necessarily AI taking our jobs. It's just enabling us to do more. Deliver more projects more quickly. Just as when we shifted from drawing boards to AutoCAD,
Correct.
and then on to 3D modeling. A design engineer can now deliver way more than a drafting engineer from 50 years ago with the drawing board. The same will be true for our engineers of the future. They'll be able to deliver more.
Yeah. And of course, there was an element, or there is an element of cutting the numbers of people needed to do a certain job, or perhaps you can look at it from another perspective, which is the increase in productivity, and productivity. But I think it's more about the people now needing to adapt and learn these new skills.
Yeah.
So certainly in the analogy or the example you've given, where the draft people, they used to draw on drawing boards with and now it's 3D, and it went through the CAD modeling. So that's perhaps a very, very clear example of how digitalization or digital transformation went through the last 20 odd years. I think from what I've seen, and it's very early, I don't think anybody could tell, I mean, you'd know, of course, more than me, but from what I'm saying, I believe the big players who already own the platforms, as you said, the Microsofts and the Alphabet, Googles, or whatever, the companies that own the office platforms, let's put it this way, they will take over the AI applications, which are related to organizing your meetings, organizing your day-to-day interactions, your calendars, as a personal. So people will have personal assistants, not just one assistant, but they will have AI agents who will do specific jobs for them, whether it's grocery, shopping, or I don't know, diet planning. It's just the ideas I'm getting to mind, maybe because I'm hungry and it's coming. It's been a long day, but these are perhaps the applications, and I think they will be mainly how do you say it, dominated by the big players. But for us engineers, I really believe that people should start looking into seeing how the application can help them in their own job or role. So for instance, I'm looking into something that could analyze drawings or schematics. Where do you see this where do you see the digital transformation going with that in terms of construction?
So I think one thing to note, one statistic that I hear banded around a lot, and that I think construction and agriculture are the two least digitally transformed industries in the world. So there's quite a lot to catch up. But I think there is kind of signs of progress being made. And I think one of the key things that we struggle with in construction is around kind of managing the information and all of the different kind of parties and stakeholders within a construction project, whether that's the designers, the engineers, right through to the contractors, subcontractors, clients, even operators. Now, I think one of the kind of foundational principles that you kind of really need to apply is around actually the data standards, and agreeing kind of a clear mandate and guidance around how the client wants to have information managed on that project. And I think that's one of the hardest, but almost one of the most kind of fundamental things that needs to be put in place first. And if you get that right, then a lot of the kind of the wider kind of transformation benefits and solutions start to hang off that. So, for example, if I'm developing 3D models, and I've got good rigor around the metadata, the asset breakdown structure, the way I'm kind of setting up those models, and the standards that I'm applying to them, then you will then kind of be able to readily kind of reuse that information for kind of future pieces of work. And similarly, then if you actually think holistically around how you're going to be kind of aligning your P6 schedule, and you then open up opportunities for kind of what we call 4D, kind of with fourth dimension being time, and be able to digitally rehearse your build. And then it kind of then goes into actually thinking about, okay, well, how am I going to kind of supervise and oversee the construction, and actually how can I capture data on site to confirm what's being built aligns with what's been designed. And if you can then use that kind of 3D model to carry through into construction and kind of align with the data that you're collecting on site, you then bit by bit building up a more complex view of the kind of situation on site, and what's being built. But also then you're building up structured data that then you can start applying other solutions on top of. So it really starts with actually kind of thinking with the end in mind, but then actually thinking around okay, well, how do I kind of set the principles? And that does take a little bit more time and effort up front, particularly the first time you do it. And actually convincing people that actually this is an investment for the long term, then actually data is an asset. It shouldn't be a liability.
And do you believe that companies are doing enough to transform digitally, or to digitalize in the construction industry, certainly in the UK? What's your feeling, or what's your observations today compared to maybe 5 or 10 years ago?
I think one thing that when I look at companies is the first question I ask is, are they doing it at scale? And I'll tell you why. Because you can go to any industry awards event, and you will see some phenomenal applications of technology, whether it's AI for program management, whether it's common data environments, whether it's some of the kind of digital rehearsals, 3D visualization, be top drawer. And there's some really phenomenal work going on in the UK construction sector. And actually, I think there's a lot of stuff that actually we are leading the way on. Particularly with the kind of the UK BIM mandate, that really has pushed the UK further ahead than other countries, and a lot of other countries are learning from us.
Hmm.
I would say is that where we fall down is on that scale of adoption, and so it is that case study of that fantastic application of AI. Is that just on one project, or is that
Hmm.
across the entire business? And that's where I think is
Hmm.
is a lot harder, because we're working with a lot of people delivering high value, complex programs of work under pressure, and if you're faced with a situation where, do I do it the way I've always done it, or do I try a new approach? And
Hmm.
more often than not, we say, let's just do it the way we've always done it,
Yeah.
unless there's really like order of magnitude improvements
Hmm.
from the new solution that you cannot possibly say no to. Say no
Hmm.
to those. So
Hmm.
I think there are more and more examples that kind of building up where it's a no-brainer, but you do need to make it a no-brainer.
Hmm. And funnily enough, but usually from what I've seen and experienced in the past, it's not the money. It's usually a matter of time or the commitment that you have on the project. The timelines of the project that usually becomes a factor that defers that willingness to digitalize or roll out something new. And that leads me to the next question. I mean, what do you think are the drivers for companies today to digitalize and to transform their delivery model in a digital way?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think when we think about project management, we think of, there's the iron triangle of cost, schedule, and quality. And so there's always going to be those three drivers, and then I
Mm.
think that then kind of fourth driver is obviously, and this is really important for us from a nuclear industry perspective, but true across in any industry, is around safety. And so I think, unfortunately, cost is usually the biggest driver, but obviously, kind of safety is got to be up there, and there's obviously the kind of safety and cost are intrinsically linked. So I think those are some of the things that will still continue to drive things, because fundamentally, when we think about digital transformation, it really is just about actually ensuring that we're using the latest tools and technologies in order to deliver our work.
Mm.
And so I'd say to electrical engineers is that don't feel like it's someone else's responsibility in order to understand what the latest solutions are out there. You
Mm.
should never kind of outsource that and kind of palm that off on someone and say, oh, that's for the digital person to worry about. It's
Mm.
for all of us as professional engineers to make sure that actually we're continually kind of challenging ourselves with that kind of growth mindset as to, okay, well, am I continuing to push the boundaries, to kind of, in order to kind of build upon, what I've learned in my formal or professional training.
And what are the core technologies, if you like? I mean, with regards to, of course, thinking as an electrical engineer, I think it applies to all engineers as well, especially those working on projects. It can be a challenge to stop and think about whether there is a new way out there that I could be proposing or I could be bringing to the table, and perhaps a more realistic or a more, let's say, affordable way is to get training first. And this is, one of the questions that I get asked a lot, and I'll pass this question to you now. Yeah, where do you think are the best core technologies or areas of development for engineers to start learning about and start getting conversant with?
It's a really good question. So I think kind of obvious place, and I mentioned this before, is kind of 3D design software and packages.
Yeah.
Still, a lot of work that we do is on 2D line drawings.
Sure. Yeah.
I think in many ways it would be difficult to ever replace the simplicity of a kind of a 2D sketch. But ensuring that that's integrated into kind of and backed up by kind of 3D models in order to improve clash detection, coordination with other disciplines. Is that I think we kind of need to think around actually kind of holistic delivery. How I coordinate civils with electrical, with structural, with any mechanical plant and ventilation, and actually think about how we deliver it as a whole package, and not just my individual element. I think one thing that we've seen over the last 10 or 15 years, and I think I mentioned it earlier, is around reality capture technologies. The progress that we've seen with kind of LiDAR, cameras, photogrammetry, drones, as systems to deploy those onto site, has been really phenomenal over the last decade. And I think it's actually becoming cheaper and cheaper to collect data on site. Now, that can be really, really powerful for us as engineers, where you want better situation awareness, better understanding of the current kind of configuration, but also if you want to capture data that then translates into kind of a 3D environment. So, for example, a lot of the modifications that we make to existing assets start with a laser scan. You get a complete measured survey in a point cloud that then provides you a kind of a reference baseline in order to deliver your 3D design on top of, and you're avoiding kind of potential issues with clashes or undocumented items on site that may be there but not on the drawings. So I think that's the other one. And then I think there's then around some of these kind of information management practices and principles and softwares. And then I think probably just the final area, and obviously this has grown a lot over the last couple of years, is just actually kind of fundamental skills in prompt engineering, coding, potentially, Python, kind of automation, kind of thinking about actually how you can manage and manipulate data much more effectively beyond just a spreadsheet. Actually, really thinking about how we can automate more of what we do. And I see some of our junior engineers like doing the work of a dozen people just through Python scripting now.
It's quite interesting, especially with the back to what you mentioned around point cloud surveying and LiDAR and 3D scanning. It makes a huge difference on existing sites, on existing substations, especially ones, as you said, that had an iteration after iteration of often or occasional undocumented update or upgrade or change, and becomes a challenging situation for a designer or an engineer to try to design a refurbishment or a replacement or a repair or an upgrade to something that is not really documented on paper fully. So this is where it's really, really beneficial. And I add my voice to yours in terms of learning 3D, and it's something that again, a lot of the graduates who send me questions and ask and say, like, how do I, like, when I get to a job interview, how do I speak about my experience? And I'm like, it would be madness for a hiring manager to expect a graduate with experience. It's just it's not realistic. And the thing I tell them about is more about the tools. There is no shortage and there is no excuse for anybody now to say I haven't learned about something, or I wasn't able to learn, because there's lots of tutorials online, lots of courses available. You could learn something like Revit. There is loads of resources out there for someone to learn about the components of a substation, the components of a construction site. So I think that there is lots to learn, but people use or could always use these kind of discussions and conversations to get some guidance around where to head in terms of the core technologies that they can pick up. Now,
Yeah.
I feel that the substation construction or the energy construction industry um, in the UK, in some areas, it is way ahead of other areas. For instance, we have digital substations in railway electrification, for instance, state of the art. We have 61850 applications that are very or pretty mature in that field. But then when you come to the energy industry, it hasn't picked up as other countries or as other industries in the UK, and that's
Mm.
understandable because of the risk and the reliability concerns, etc., which is understandable. But where do you see, in terms of digital transformation, what are the other industries that the construction industry can look at and learn from?
It's a great question. I think the lot of the places that people talk about are in advanced manufacturing, automotive, those sorts of areas. And one example at the moment is that we're doing quite a lot of work with robotics on sites, and what we've seen over the last 20 years with kind of industrial and more recently collaborative robots is that they've come down in price as well. As as you deploy more of a technology, you develop, you go further down the experience curve and kind of reduce price. But also with that experience develops a kind of an ecosystem of suppliers of technologies that support that. And one example of where we're seeing this manifest itself is you look at the kind of Saudi Arabian mega project NEOM,
Yeah.
where they've established some really big partnerships to automate steel reinforcement placement on sites, such that they can move more of that fabrication off-site into a kind of a factory environment, which is then not only improving quality, but also it's reducing the amount of kind of labour that they need on site in an area where it's very difficult to get the scale of resources that you need. So that's kind of that shift to off-site manufacture and off-site assembly will be aided by thinking about actually how do I take those kind of manufacturing mindset and actually how do I start to kind of scale production lines of items of equipment in a way that you would more readily see in a manufacturing environment.
And how about so robotics? You do remember the last time we met, and it's interesting, we haven't met ever since, but the last time we met, if you remember, do you remember it, in the Axis building in Birmingham?
Yes,
It was
yeah.
just before the pandemic, so just before the
Yeah.
lockdown, I think it was early days, and you had that robot that you
Yes,
took out
yeah.
of the bag and showed me, and it was
Yeah.
really interesting. We've got a couple of comments. Talha says the future, I believe, leans more toward the delegation of tasks, a nightmare for the one-man show mindset, an opportunity for the growth mindset. Yeah, I think, as we mentioned, there will be. I think that's the first thing that's gonna be rolled out, and it's just gonna take us by storm, all of us, which is the amount of tasks that could be just automated at I won't say a click of a button, but it would be at a, I don't know what do you want to call it, a shout at the at the phone. So you're probably just going to be able to dictate the phone and ask them to put together a presentation and rely on the latest few emails and reports on certain projects, etc., to just automatically put the slideshow together, only for you to review it. What do you think, Sam?
Well, so I think, I mean, Tyler's point here in terms of kind of delegation of tasks is a really interesting one, and I think one of the outcomes of kind of digital transformation is that you kind of increase the size of the pie. You know, the value of your work increases, but the slices of the pie reduce. So there will be more specialisms and parties that obviously need coordination and alignment. And so I think the point he was making is around actually you're going to find yourself interacting with more and more specialisms. And I think what you were saying there, Mo, is that some of those tasks will be, you know, potentially fulfilled by an agent, you know, rather than just a human being in their own right. But in terms of then kind of how we kind of integrate those agents, or you know, into our processes, there is a kind of cautionary tale here, and actually there was a an image on, you know, kind of cartoon on LinkedIn a couple of days ago that me and my colleagues both all saw, where, you know, someone is having to write a report, and they've got the kind of 10 bullet points that they're desperately then having to write a report for their boss. They use AI to generate the report, send it off across to the boss. The boss says, "Oh my goodness, this report's way too long. Put it into AI, summarize in 10 bullet points." You know, there's an acute risk of this slop, but also of slop in the system, but also actually us actually not actually delivering any value from these solutions as well.
I mean, I talk about this a lot on my lives, that people send me messages, and there would be an opportunity for me to answer questions and try to help as much as I could. But a lot of messages I get are just basically AI, because AI is integrated into LinkedIn Premium now, I guess.
Right.
So you could just generate whatever. So I got like messages that are, you know, there are some words put together, but they don't make any sense. You know, what are you asking for? What are you requesting? It's it's um it's really kind of, you know, a surreal. It's like really talking to a machine.
Yeah.
And this is where the danger is. I think the danger is, you know, people or some trying to, in the spirit of saving time and appearing or attempting to be as professional as possible, etc., using these ready-made rocket emoji messages that really don't serve a purpose in the way I say it.
But I think when we think about kind of future skills, there will be a role for really important. I think the winners will be people who can leverage these tools effectively. But what I think will become more important, and are you still there, Mo? You just frozen. Oh, I think it's just me for the moment. Just bear with us whilst Mo gets back online, if that's okay. I think he was mid coffee, and here he is. He's back again.
I think it's my connection this time, but I'm back on the other side, am I? So,
No worries. It's all good. It's all good. What I was going to say is that, and I see this with my kids, Mo, that more and more it's about the ability to make decisions and the quality of those decisions, and I think that's something that we will struggle to entirely defer to a machine. You know, that, and particularly in our roles as engineers, and same is true for medics, is that there will always need to be, to some degree, a human there to be able to assess, what the information that's been presented, the validity of it, the advice it's been, receiving from the machine, and then actually say, this is what I think we need to do next. And and I think that would be something that continues for quite some time, particularly in our industry, particularly where there are safety critical decisions to be made, where there are, potentially people's lives or, the environment and people on this planet that are vulnerable. So thinking about actually how we can, as engineers, use the information, understand it, could cross-check that against our training, our learning, kind of our sense of kind of fundamental engineering principles, and then make decisions, I think will be really important.
And yeah, I think the technology is also, or LLMs are advancing very rapidly. They're getting better and better at a scary pace, at an unprecedented pace. And we'll just have to adapt, I think. And you're right, develop that extra layer of I don't know, verification and trying to decide on these inputs and really questioning these inputs. And it's interesting because there was a research from MIT recently around how the brains. So they put three groups of people who used conventional or classical research methods and wrote their essays themselves, others that depended on Google search and others that depended on GPT or whatever. And they measured brain activity, and they found that, as you'd expect, the people who used the AI were, emitting the least brain waves or whatever. So activity was less. So the brains are less engaged in that sense.
Yeah.
And I feel this is because of two things, because it's comfort and ease. You naturally just are getting someone else to do the job, so why bother? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
But at the same time, because you're not actually crafting the output, you're not actually crafting the message, and you're not exerting the effort, of course.
Yeah.
And that's understandable and normal. And it is a double-edged sword, isn't it? It's good in a good. It's good in the speed and the rapid and deployment at scale, but it's also scary if you're just gonna rely on it blindly and let it take over the decision-making process.
Yeah.
So I think we've got another question for you. Excuse me. We're I think 40 minutes now. And I know I promised you only 30 minutes, but this is what usually happens on these lives. So let's take the last question and then conclude. While you're mentioning how future used to be envisaged and now it's here, it just came into my mind how the future of design would turn out to be, where virtual reality is taken into consideration, enhancing the design layouts. Yes, so this is already happening. And if you remember, a few years back, we were involved on one of these projects in substations, and we had some AR, so augmented reality developments, and it was really interesting to see how was the design just put, into a visual representation and a 3D immersive representation, which was also accessible because some of it was just on the tablets. You didn't need special goggles or anything. But this is something that I feel is also going to take over soon. What do you think?
So it's an area that is really interesting to me, and I think actually I remember the first time I went in VR, and it was in I think at Butlins in Minehead in 1993, maybe 94, 95, around then. I'm showing my age now, but uh, but that was kind of over 30 years ago, around 30 years ago, and people were like, "Wow, VR back then," and so I do sometimes wonder why is this not really taken off in our industry as much as it has done. And I think we've got some really good examples of where VR has been powerful and can have an impact. But it's still very much in early adopters. But some of the trends that I think are worth following, obviously, some of the work in the gaming sector. And I think we're seeing gaming engines like Unity and Unreal becoming basically the workhorses for these immersive experiences.
True.
I think we're also seeing obviously kind of progress in the technology. So you've obviously got kind of Apple's headset recently released. That is obviously still at kind of a high price point, but it's actually obviously a kind of technology that is becoming kind of much more ubiquitous, and similarly the kind of the Meta Quest 3 as well. So you're seeing the hardware improving. You're seeing some of the kind of the software improving. You're also seeing the likes of NVIDIA. A lot of their GPUs, their graphical processing units that they're using for AI, obviously started in gaming. And they just then found that actually, these chips were actually very, very powerful for kind of AI training and inference. Now, obviously, the money that's been thrown into that and the volume will then drive down kind of the price point of these GPUs that then we can use for these immersive experiences. And I think also then once you get to a point where actually the difference between what you can create in computer, in kind of a virtual experience, is less imperceptible to being any different to reality. That will be when we start to see much better adoption. Because I think one thing the brain struggles with, or a lot, particularly the ones that not early adopters of this technology, is then where they've presented with an experience where the frame rate's not high enough, or where the fidelity, the resolution of the experience is just too hard work for the brain to process. So I think this is an area to watch over the next 5 years. Yes,
indeed. I think with the GPU advancement, but also I really think that the rendering engines, as you said, from the gaming industries have now caught up. It's just a matter of now getting more people into that world building and that technology. And I think once AI gets into that as well, on a wider deployment scale, it's just gonna again accelerate things.
yes,
There's a lot that we couldn't tell about the future, of course, but what we know is I think it's just gonna let's say advance at an unprecedented rate. I mean, the rate of change today is just multiples of what it was 10 years ago, never mind 20 years ago and 30 years ago. So exciting times.
it is exciting times, and I think one kind of nugget I heard is that we overestimate what will happen in the next 2 years, but underestimate what will happen in the next 10 years.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Sam, thank you so much.
No problem.
This has been very, very enjoyable and educational for me. So thank you, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as
I did.
I did. And thank you for everybody who's asked a question and left a comment. Any concluding notes? Anything you want to say before we sign off today?
I would just say, well, thanks to you, Mo,
Appreciate
for organising this. Thanks to the audience. Please, make sure you kind of share some feedback. It would be great to get some kind of feedback on, what you enjoyed, and also then what you'd like to learn more of. Connect with me on LinkedIn. More than happy to kind of continue this conversation, hear about your own stories and perspectives on digital transformation, adoption of new technologies, and most of all, just give it a go. Like be open-minded to try new things, and invest a bit of your own time as well.
100%.
Don't be prepared. Don't expect someone just to hand this to you on a plate.
True. True. That's very helpful, and very true indeed. So
All right.
we're gonna do this again, if you, of course, are up for it.
Of course.
I plan to do these lives regularly with guests such as yourself. So I hope you accept the invitation to come back on the. I'll call it the show now. I have a show, and we'll have you back at some point. Thank you so much, Sam, again, and appreciate your your insights and your help today. And thanks for giving us your time.
No problem.
Hopefully, we'll meet soon. Yeah.
Yes, that would be
All
good.
right. Yeah.
Excellent.
Brilliant.
Well done,
Thank
Mo.
you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cheers.